Okay guys, I'm gonna apologize in advance. Today's episode is completely on me. The rest of the PetaPixel team didn't really want to do this. They're like, why? But I want to take a retrospective look at an ancient camera, but one that has huge historical significance. This is the Canon 300D, okay? In North America, it was called the Digital Rebel, but in Japan, they called it the Kiss, an adorable name. I'm gonna refer to it as the original Rebel because it started a whole line of digital cameras that many of us probably got our start on. And this camera came out at a very interesting time because before this, digital SLRs were seen as niche pro equipment. People were early adopters and it was notoriously expensive. But the original Canon Digital Rebel was the first kit to be found for under $1,000, DSLR and lens, and that's pretty amazing. Now, it came with an 18-55, and that's a lens that I had, but mine's busted. Turns out there's an aperture blade jammed in the front of the lens. Luckily, we find ourselves in Atlanta, Georgia, the home of KEH.com. We're gonna visit them. I gotta replace this lens. I'm Chris Niccolls, this is PetaPixel. Let's see what I can find. All right guys, so you know that KH has long been a supporter of the channel. We always appreciate that. And I'm telling you to go check out the website, but you know what's even better? If you need a lens, just come to KEH. We're here at the warehouse in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is their outflow center. This is where all the products that are on the website sit. I ordered a lens. I'm gonna ask and find out where it is so I can put on this Rebel so that we can do the rest of this review. Okay, so I'm here with Bora, the Outbounds Operation Manager. And Bora, I hear you have a lens on hold for me.
Yes, we do.
Where can I find that?
It is going to be an AH35C3.
Wait.
Good luck finding it amongst the thousands of products that we have. I think you got this. I have faith in you.
Okay, thanks, I guess. Thanks, I guess. Okay, AJ. Okay, that's not, oh wait, what's this 5D Mark IV? 5D Mark II. I can't get distracted. Okay. What? A1 program. Looks like, oh, beautiful shape. I'm still looking. Okay, AOAH. Okay. Hey! Oh, fantastic. I'd much rather just order on the website and have it shipped to me, but whatever. Tamron SP 60mm f2.
There you go.
DI2. This is an awesome prime. Thank you, Bora. Okay, so running through trying to find the product, fun, but maybe not the most efficient way. Definitely check out the website. It's very easy. I mean, that's how I found this lens in the first place. And this looks like it's in beautiful shape. Everything on the website was listed. It's got the hood, it's got caps. This was in like new minus condition, which means it's basically pristine and it looks fantastic. And if you change your mind, they even have a generous return policy, but I think I'm gonna stick with this one here. So I'm gonna stick this on the camera. We're gonna get shooting, but it's a really cool process, not only to come see the place, but just how impressive this operation is. That's definitely why KH is our official pre-owned camera gear partner. So through the magic of television, here I have my Canon Digital Rebel and now that Tamron SP 60mm f2. They're gonna rock all around Atlanta here. Now this camera came out in 2003, all right? And it started this whole trend of making DSLRs for everyday people to get into photography with and start to learn manual exposure, manual controls and stuff. And so it's really influential. But you know, Jordan and I, we actually took a look at this camera about 11 years ago. That's when DSLRs were still used commonly. They were prevalent. Now, of course, we have the whole shift to mirrorless. So some 23 years later, I want to take this out and kind of relive the shooting experience of using not only a DSLR, but really one of the earliest DSLRs. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this camera handles, how it feels, and what it's like to shoot it again after all these years. Now the Canon EOS 10D was a very popular sort of semi-professional camera body at the time that this came out, and this does borrow some stuff from it. You know, the 10D's menu is basically stripped down. A lot of features just locked and thrown into here to operate this camera, and they do have the exact same 6-megapixel CMOS sensor in here. And to be honest, it was a pretty good sensor for the time, okay? Like, it's odd now that Jordan's probably shooting the video at a higher resolution than these photos are, but you know, like, look, the color was always nice. I'm eager to see that old school image quality again. Maybe not so much the high ISO performance, but we'll get to that. Now, this camera at first glance is hideous. There's just no way to get around it. Like, it was an ugly, very plasticky body with this glossy silver finish. You absolutely will see this from a mile away. It had a rubberized grip and this rubberized side panel, but 23 years later, this was turning into glue and gum and it was gross. So I actually stripped it all off. I should also mention that you can get these cameras for essentially nothing. This is one of these odd pieces that were obviously very common. They sold a ton of these, but also just don't hold any used value. So they go for a song. But there is a rare limited edition all black version. I've never seen one myself in person. They are quite rare and they actually hold quite a bit of collectible value. But this is the kind of classic silver body that most people will be rocking. And like, it makes clunky noises and there's shaky noises and it feels just like a chunk of plastic. They're not too heavy, about 650 grams if you load a battery and a card in there. So walking around, it doesn't feel unbalanced or ungainly, but it's certainly not a compact or lightweight camera. So of course this could be a bit of a nostalgia trip for me, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is the menus, because like, you know, I remember these menus, the sort of color scheme, and it's kind of interesting that Canon hasn't really changed them that much. Like, they've actually stuck to a fairly similar operation aesthetic throughout their whole history, which is cool to see. As I mentioned, this is a similar operating system that the 10D would have, but they did strip a lot of the more advanced controls away. And that does leave this being a fairly basic overall situation. But at least on the top of the camera here, we do have a mode dial, which gives us access to full manual capability, aperture priority, shutter priority, program, and of course, a ton of different auto modes to help the beginner out. I'm not really going to be playing with those. On the back of the camera, all the buttons feel very plastic-y. They're kind of hard to find. And you know, things like white balance and ISO can be quickly set right off of these back buttons on the joystick. But what I do find annoying is if I'm looking through the viewfinder, I don't get any of that information in there. So I have to take my eye away, look at the LCD panel above the screen here and see all my adjustments and then go back to shooting. And that does slow me down. So as far as control goes, what kind of creative operations do I have access to? Well, I do have a depth of field preview button here, and this means that if I choose a stop down aperture and I push this, it will close the aperture down and I can see through the viewfinder my depth of field, what's in focus and what isn't. Over on this side, I do have a single button that goes between single shooting, a 2.5 frame per second burst rate, which is very slow, absolutely, or self-timer functionality. And then here on the back, I can choose between one of 7 autofocusing points or let the camera decide amongst all the autofocusing points. And I do also have an exposure lock button. Otherwise, there is a exposure compensation control here. Hold down this button with my thumb, turn the command dial, and I can change exposure compensation in half-stop increments. I also do actually get a little illumination light, so if I'm trying to see my settings in low light, I can do that. So of course I remember selling this camera pretty much when I first started working at the camera store, and so it's really cool now to have a DSLR in my hands again. It's been a hot minute since I reviewed one, and Atlanta's such a great place. This is my second time here. I love coming to this city. The weather's beautiful. The people are beautiful. They're really friendly. We're walking down the Beltline, which I haven't seen before. It's just great getting street portraits and talking to people and stuff. And having that viewfinder, that SLR viewfinder, is a cool experience to relive. And I mean, I love being able to see real light coming into that viewfinder, be able to see their faces and react to it and stuff. This viewfinder, though, I remember when I did sell this camera, one of the sales points that we could differentiate this from a higher-end camera was the relatively poor penta mirror system. This is using reflective mirrors to create that prism as opposed to a solid glass prism. The higher-end cameras have that, but honestly, using it now, it's still fine. I'm like, I have no problem with the detail, the resolution, the brightness coming through this viewfinder. It's been a fine experience. So maybe it was hard on that back in 2003. But one thing I'm going to be hard on now, of course, the back panels. Yuck. So as I mentioned earlier, in order to save battery power, you actually have 2 back panels here. You've got an LCD panel on top, which just gives me my exposure information, my settings, that kind of thing. And then you have this 1.8-inch TFT, 118,000 dots. Okay, this is like 320 by 240 resolution. This is like original streaming resolution when I was a kid. It's brutal. This is like the same size as like a GoPro screen. And honestly, although you can zoom in, I really miss having a high resolution panel now. In fact, what I'm really noticing and kind of finding interesting about this experience is just seeing how far we have come. You know, speaking of how far we've come, like modern cameras just work so smoothly, so quickly. Any complaints I've ever made on the operation of a camera recently, I take back completely because, man, this camera is slow in so many ways. I mean, You gotta remember that this was a stripped down camera at the time, designed to get it under a certain price and as affordable as possible. And so, yeah, it is very basic, but there are some downsides there. I mean, it's only a 6 megapixel sensor, but this is writing to CF cards. And if you can go up to 8 gig cards. I got a 4 gig card in here, but if you go higher than 2 gigs, it tends to slow the camera down and bog it down to do playback, bring back photos, that kind of thing. Also, I am shooting this in RAW because I want to have the ability to edit and push and pull a little bit, especially with the limited dynamic range that we had on these old sensors. That being said though, I mean, like, shooting in RAW really slows this camera down. There are a lot of times where I'll take 3 or 4 shots in a row and then it's just giving me a busy signal and I gotta wait till I can take a shot again. And that is very frustrating. I could shoot JPEG. I cannot shoot RAW plus JPEG. That is not an option at all. It's probably a good thing it doesn't shoot RAW plus JPEG, to be honest. It'll probably bog it down even further. And like, yeah, it's just a slow experience. Even turning the camera on takes a good 1.5 to 2 seconds before I can shoot. Anytime I take a photo, I can't even operate the menu until the buffer's cleared. Like, there's a lot of things that really slow you down. And I am starting to remember what that was like, but I think we take for granted just how smooth and fast cameras are today. But you know what? It's not all doom and gloom using an old SLR like this. There are some benefits too. Like, this uses the venerable Canon BP511 battery. My originals were toast, absolutely. I've been sitting too long, but I did buy some new ones and I get like 500 to 600 shots on a full charge. Like, this thing goes and goes and goes. To give you context, I was just raving about the latest Sony A7R6's latest battery and processor giving us about 500 to 600 shots on a full charge. So we've come full circle, but we always appreciated this extra battery life. The other thing I'm really liking about this is actually the shutter mechanism itself. This doesn't use the same shutter mechanism as like the more advanced SLRs that were on the market at the time, but it was good. I mean, up to 4,000 of a second maximum shutter speed, 1/200th of a second flash sync speed. I mean, this is fine for a camera of this price, but the actual shooting experience of it, it makes a great noise and it's actually very stable. I'm not feeling a lot of mirror slap or anything like that. So even at slower shutter speeds, I'm confident this is still and stable. You know, one of the nice things about traveling away from Alberta at this time of year is you actually get flowers in a growing season. We're like just starting to bud back home, but Atlanta is in full bloom, has been for a while. So we took an opportunity to go to the Atlanta Botanical Gardens. Never been there before. Really cool place to test out this new Tamron SP 60mm macro lens. But it also showed me an issue here. I mean, I just haven't used a DSLR in a long time, and yeah, like, I don't have IBIS on this body, so when I'm holding this camera, like, that viewfinder's moving a lot. When I take a picture, it's looking at something slightly different than when I first hit the shutter. Like, you know, this is just stuff that I have to get back to being used to. And it's amazing how much we take for granted these modern conveniences. So no problem. I mean, fast shutter speed, crank up the ISO. This goes from 100 to 1600 ISO at the maximum. It's like a far cry from what we're used to, again, on a modern mirrorless camera. And when you go above 400 ISO on this camera, you are going to see digital noise. It's pretty rough. This is certainly taking me back to the autofocusing experience of affordable DSLRs. Like, I got a 7-point system here, but I'm pretty much just relying on that central point because that's the only one that's a cross-type sensor with better sensitivity in low light situations. So I'm doing a lot of, you know, focus, recompose, and shoot, which is fine. You know, we still do that on a lot of modern cameras today, but this definitely is struggling in lower light situations. Sometimes, you know, it just wants to refocus. Like, you didn't have an option on the 300D to go between servo autofocusing and constant continuous servo focusing. It's basically designed so if it sees something move, it'll try to detect that and start following it. Otherwise, it kind of does a one shot. It's the AI focus system, and I never liked it even back in the day. But, you know, I'm struggling through that. I can easily go manual focus, and having a proper, you know, optical prism is nice to manually focus with. But let's keep in mind that this is not like an era issue. This isn't a 2003 problem. This is a entry-level camera problem. This just did not have a sophisticated autofocusing system where if you go to the more modern bodies like the EOS 3 or the EOS 1 or, you know, even the more advanced digital cameras of the time, they had more advanced autofocusing systems that worked much better than this. I'm not going to get things like back button autofocus, which I personally love. It's just not designed that way for a camera that's meant for people starting their photographic journey. Okay, everybody, well, clearly we're not in Atlanta anymore. We had a great time. Again, big thanks to all the people at KH for making our stay wonderful. But now we find ourselves back in Calgary. I've processed my photos, and now I want to talk about the results that I got out of the Canon Digital Rebel 300D. You know, part of the reason why I wanted to even start this sort of retrospective look again at the 300D is just because it's been so much time. I mean, it's now 23 years since this camera was released, and image quality has come such a far away. And I was really curious to see, how do these old sensors stand up? Looking at my files now, I think we can say a few things. I mean, first off, 6 megapixels of resolution. Sure, you notice it. I don't have a lot of room to crop or anything like that, but overall, I like the look. I like the sharpness. I like the tone. I mean, the Tamron SP60mm has proven to be a really nice lens for that. And so image quality-wise, I love the detail. I love the Canon JPEG color. Where this sensor really lets me down, where we really see how far we've come, is when it comes to things like dynamic range. You know, nowadays we've just got so much room to push and pull shadows and highlights. We really take it for granted, and rightfully so. I mean, that's one of the main benefits of modern technology. But shooting these files and seeing the results, it took me right back to when I first started my career with photography and digital photography, and just remembering talking to clients about what their camera can do and what you have to watch out for. There are certainly pitfalls. I mean, first thing you're going to notice here is things like shadow detail. I know I talked about this a little bit, but here I can really see the results. I mean, I did an example here where I'm pushing shadows after the fact in my raw file, and you can see, yeah, I can get some detail back, but it's just really noisy, really gritty. We're not going to have any detail there. But even more importantly is highlights. So the Canon Digital Rebel, you'll blow out highlights real quick, and you really got to watch for it. We have way less latitude back then than we do now. You can see it very clearly here where you can just have very easily blown out areas in scenes that might not even seem that contrasty. But the other place that I really noticed this lack of dynamic range is in colors in general. I forgot about this because it's been so long, but back in the day, as rich as the colors are out of the Canon, as much as I love the look of it overall, they can block up really quickly. And this is where colors just become solid patches and masses of color. And actually shooting at the Botanical Garden in Atlanta was a perfect example of this, where I can just see areas where oranges and violets, colors that these older sensors particularly had difficulty with, can easily block up. So it means protecting those highlights, really trying to keep the exposure down. But then what happens when you have those dark shadows? What happens when you get into low light? If you push your ISO because you need to shoot in low light situations, you lose a ton of sharpness, a ton of detail, get lots of noise. It's not even organic looking. And so this camera is really limited in a lot of ways. At the time, we thought it was amazing, but I could see how people really wanted to still stick to film because film had way more latitude, way more dynamic range, was actually in some cases far more forgiving than these old digital sensors. Now, for our particular adventure that we had here, I don't have a Canon speedlight anymore, but I do have a pop-up flash on the 300D, and I did pop that up, and it is in pretty much the worst possible place it could be. So, you know, you can see here, we can get that stark look where the flash just kind of bleaches out highlights and stuff and shiny faces, but you can drag the shutter and do some fun stuff. I played with that at low light. But, you know, it again shows me that flash back in the day was so important because you often needed that supplementary light. You did not want to be just cranking the ISO. Whereas nowadays, I would say in a lot of cases, the opposite is true. We tend to leave the flash at home in a lot of situations because we have the high ISO performance that we can really pull those shadows up, and we can really not worry about blown out highlights and stuff for a lot of grain, a lot of noise. The other thing I'm going to say here too is focusing was, difficult. But overall, I feel like most of my shots were in focus. There are the occasional ones though where, it just didn't quite nail it or it went to the wrong spot. But look, the point of this video is not to criticize this old camera. It really is in reverence of it because I did have a lot of fun dragging this around. It's a neat nostalgic experience to shoot. And it was really about not just nostalgia, but reminding myself what it was like to shoot cameras back then. You know, I talk about things like this. My Panasonic GM5 being one of my favorite cameras. And this is about 2016 that it came out. And when you look at the photos here, well, a lot of people would classify them as having a vibe, which is to say, yeah, they're not the same quality. I mean, we're not getting the same megapixels, and we're getting noise, and we're, you know, not getting the same latitude and stuff like that, but it's worlds above something like this. This is still 13 years newer than this camera was. And this really took me back to a cool time at the camera store selling these cameras and just seeing like the professional cameras of the day. We're talking like Nikon D2HSs, Canon 1DSs, Kodak DCS-14Ns. Like, it was the dark ages. And what was so cool about this particular camera is it really brought digital photography to the masses and really got people using digital photography as their regular everyday tool. So look, I'm not going to start waxing poetic and suggesting that you should ever go back to shooting a camera like this, all right? That was not the purpose of this project. It was really for me to get some perspective on just how far cameras have come and the changes that we've seen over these more than 2 decades since this camera came out. But a camera is still a camera, a tool is still a tool, and I really loved using this tool in Atlanta. And I actually really like a lot of the shots that I got out of it. Would I ever want to go back there and shoot that again? Probably not, but it's just cool to see and appreciate where it all began, where it all started, and honestly, where the passion of digital photography for a lot of you out there may have very well started. If not with this camera, something right after it. And so I think we can always look back on that with just the due appreciation that it deserves. But I hope you guys enjoyed this and found it interesting. I hope you guys like the photos that we were able to get there in Atlanta and maybe showcase that beautiful city a little bit. Leave your comments below and let us know what you think. You know, we always appreciate hearing that feedback. Let us know, you know, how you started your photographic journey. What camera was it for you that got everything started in the digital photography era? And do consider checking out the PetaPixel podcast. It's easy because it's on this exact same channel, or you can listen to it on all your favorite podcasting apps. And also, would you mind getting a PetaPixel.com membership if you haven't already? It's $3 a month, $30 a year. Look at all the benefits you get. It's insane. You get so much back for your money, and it really helps us out with projects like Atlanta and so many more. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon with more on PetaPixel.